God has always wanted to live with his people, to be close to them, to be with them, to have a real relationship with them. It started in the Garden of Eden, and we see it all the way through the Bible. God is determined to come from heaven and to be close to his people. David had this heart for God. He said when he became king, he says, I can't just live in a building and God has no place. God needs to have a dwelling place. So he set it in his heart to build a temple for the Lord near this mountain that he called Zion. Eventually he builds a temple and he rules as king, and we all know King David, but he begins to call Jerusalem Zion. It's something that's near and dear to his heart. It's a place of refuge. It's a place of deliverance. It's a place of safety. It's a fortress from our enemies. And David rules over Zion and desires to build a temple there. And his son ultimately builds the temple. And for hundreds of years, that's the place where God would come and meet with his people. He would come and live on earth with his people. One of the most controversial things that Jesus ever said is he's teaching, and he just spits this out kind of off the cuff, but he says, I'm going to tear down this temple and then I'll rebuild it in 3 days. And everyone absolutely loses their mind. Nobody can understand what it is that Jesus means. But now we understand that Jesus actually did. He died, and 3 days later, he created a new temple. And that temple there remains in ruins, but the one that Jesus built lives on forever. And God's promise to David was that one person from his family would rule and sit on the throne of God's kingdom forever. And that is our King Jesus. And he tore down the idea of the temple, even though it's still a valuable place, and even though Israel and God's people are still special. What Jesus then does is he makes it possible for God to do what he always wanted, which is to come and live in the hearts and lives of humans, you and me. So Paul says, don't you know that you are the temple of God's presence? You're the one that he wants to come and live in. In another place, he says that we are that temple because God lives in us, and each of us, he is putting together to make his holy temple. You see, you are Zion and I am Zion. Just like David had a place of refuge, safety, and deliverance, of salvation in one location, Jesus is coming and ruling and reigning in your heart, giving you deliverance and salvation, giving you a fortress of safety and peace. And he does that by living in you. You are God's temple because God has always wanted to live with his people. Right here, we are changing the name of our church to this idea that Jesus had when he said, I am going to make you into the temple. You are going to be rebuilt into the place that God lives in. And so we, each of us, are Zion. I am Zion. You are Zion. We are Zion, together being built. And we desire right here in this place, built on the heritage of 75 years of people being committed to changing lives to a place where Jesus could dwell. We want to continue that and give God a place where he can meet with his people, live with his people, and have relationship with you and me and the people of this area. We are changing our name to Zion to reflect God's heart and give him a place where he can come and live in a special way, that he can do the things that he desires to do in and around the hearts of believers. We believe with all our hearts that this is a time where we can pray, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And in one word, Zion. That is the idea of that one prayer. God, do in our hearts, in our lives, what you have always desired to do, to live in and with your people. This community right here on this hill will be called Zion from this day forward to reflect God's heart. We are Zion.